tipping point of mass adoption. I'm sure you're still getting some of those people that aren't quite believers yet, right?
Oh yeah.
So tell me what you say to them to maybe not necessarily sell Snapchat, but what are you doing to kind of get them maybe excited or at least curious enough to download it?
Well, the nice part is Periscope is my primary platform. It's probably where I have, I don't have the largest following there, but that's where I spend a lot of, my focus with brands on. And I learned, it took me a while to learn. After about 30 brands that I pitched to work with from an influencer perspective or a strategy perspective, trying to get them to embrace Periscope, and every one of them saying no. Saying, no, not worth the risk, I don't have the time for it, it's live, it disappears, blah, 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 blah. I quickly realized I was actually presenting the value proposition and the story incorrectly. And so it's the same thing with Snapchat, is I don't actually mention Snapchat or Periscope in my pitches. I open up by saying, do you believe that you need to be perfect and in control? If you say yes, this will be the end of our meeting, and I value your time. Thank you for understanding that. If you say no, if you believe perfection is not something you have to have, and control is an illusion because it is, then let's continue on. And then I ask them, about storytelling, about relating to their audience. How do you actually do personalization? Don't just tell me it's a buzzword for your marketing side. And then I walk through things like influencer marketing. How do I actually truly tell? Like, I don't care about Twitter impressions anymore. When someone on Periscope tells me, Brian, I have 100,000 followers on Twitter, but when I go live on Periscope, I only have 100 live viewers. I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. And they're like, well, no, I have 100,000 followers on Twitter. And I said, well, how many reactions do you get per tweet? Usually 1 or 2 people reply or retweet. So is your community 100,000, or is it a much smaller piece? And I think for me, that's why I say mindset, because Snapchat requires a mindset shift, not only for brands, but for managing expectations, numbers, views, and not to mention, Snapchat does not give us much data. So we really do have to have brands that are willing to understand the ultimate value of storytelling, relating with your audience, and kind of being there early on where personalization can actually be implemented. So that's kind of how I do it. I don't even mention it. So at the end, usually at the end, they go, yes, Brian, I want to build my community. I want to relate with people. I want to work with influencers. And I want to find a place where I can filter the noise. And then I say, well, I think we need to build out a Snapchat and Periscope story or a strategy. And let's understand which people we're going to collaborate with, not just collaborate with the biggest Snapchat. I don't need DJ Khaled for everything, right? I don't need those. He's not my target audience, and that's where I start at it. And I can tell you, I'm having some pretty early success. More people are jumping on board from a Snapchat influencer side than Periscope was early on for me. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely a good sign. And I think, we're being marketers in here, all of us, basically. We've all been following Gary Vaynerchuk forever. I would be, completely stupid if I didn't mention what he said to you in a video that we all got to see. How badass was that, by the way? That, you text each other. I know you guys talk and all that. So that's really cool for a guy like me to see. But when he's telling you to siphon all your eyeballs to Snapchat, you've been doing it anyways. So now, you're just kind of going all in when you already have. So
well, yeah, actually, for me, like Gary Vee is definitely someone that I've looked up to, read all of his content, I follow him closely, and we actually disagree on a lot of things and just a different implementation. But one of the things we definitely both have is respect for each other's communities, and the fact that when we make asks and we do things, our communities are very responsive. And I'm not saying that I'm on the same level, but I'm saying that that's one of the things I definitely learned from Gary is that the jabbing and the giving value ultimately, whenever I right hook, no matter the size, small or big, from a book perspective. I have a box. I bought 38, or I have 38 books of Gary Vee's, not because he told me to, but because he gives me value, for 2 years, and every 2 years, all I gotta do is buy books. Like that's return that I don't have to pay for a mentor. But with Gary too, he's an investor in Snapchat, so I took a lot of his early advice with kind of a grain of salt, but I will say that he's an investor on Meerkat, and he actually left Meerkat before I did. I was still on Meerkat when one of your investors stopped using it and moved to Periscope, which is a lesson for me to learn. I'm gonna start when I see that happening. I'm probably gonna jump ship quicker than I did in the Meerkat space. But for me, I'm all about go big or go home. All about having a strategy. I think every digital action you take, every single one, is part of telling your story. And I don't care if it disappears in 24 hours. I don't care if it disappears immediately. Every single digital action you take is part of your personal brand, and your personal brand is your handshake, your resume, your first impression. Your future is built on that digital piece. And the word that I'm using the most, and it's in my keynote that I'm giving about Snapchat coming up, is the word access. And people are craving access to experiences, to people. The reason my philosophy on Periscope is think like a fan, because people want to have access they cannot get anywhere else. Well, not only do they want that access, but my story yesterday, I mean, it was probably one of the coolest days on social media for me in 2 years. And that's someone that lives and breathes in this space. I have an amazing Twitter audience. I love Twitter. Twitter has changed my world, changed my life. But my experience yesterday, when I went all in, I let everybody know I'm gonna be super engaged. So I'm gonna create a ton of content. I'm gonna teach. I'm gonna answer all of your questions. I mean, the amount of people that responded to me. And here's the thing. I would have guessed, I wish I would have started making a note. I would have guessed I had more people over 45 engage me than under 45. So that kind of puts a little squirrel in that thing. But you know, I'm not in the number, the people that you've had on the show have way bigger numbers, way bigger viewers than mine. Most of my growth has happened in the last 90 days or so, and my views side. But what I was trying to figure out is understanding what kind of content they liked, how long they liked it. I was really looking for feedback. Man, the feedback I got was valuable. It was personal. It was authentic. It was inspirational. They were motivating me to keep going. You know, and by the end of the day, yesterday, I was like fired up because I felt I was closer to my community today than I was the day before. And that's someone that I work really hard on that. So yeah, I mean, Snapchat for me is this idea now is we're moving towards how do I get access? And access to me, Snapchat is a massive tool for that.
Yeah, well said, Brian. I think I can't say it any better. I mean, you nailed it right on the head. It's all about the access, less about numbers. And you can see the energy. Guys, if you're not following Brian right now, go check out his story. Make sure that, I mean, you can see the energy just pouring out into his stories. And it's been like that for a while. I really, really enjoyed the collab you did with Tristan Tales. I mean, that was just badass.
It was awesome from my side because to set the stage there, I was at CES and I was brought to an event by the MGM for I was a Periscoper, right? There was 2 Periscopers and 12 Snapchatters that were there at this event. And I met Tristan. I met that entire Snapchat group, Danny Burke. I mean, these were all awesome guys, but they didn't know me from anybody, right? They're like, oh, I'm supposed to know you. They shook my hands. We had a great time just being creators, talking. And the next day I got a text and he said, hey, I want to feature you on one of my stories. I want you to come collaborate with me. And I've learned early on, I am not someone that is talented in music, making it or singing it. I'm not talented as a painter or an artist. I respect the creator's talent immensely. If someone's a photographer and they tell me to turn, I never question because that's their skill set. And I've always prided myself on that. And I went with Tristan, and Tristan had storyboarded. He had lines out there for me. And all I did was anything he asked. If he said, do it, I did it. And the fact where he did different camera angles and he used a couple of hacks where he brought the music in and the ability for me to see that from a very firsthand experience was very awestruck for me because I was honored he wanted me to be a part of it. And then I was able to really see the art and the effort. I mean, holy crap, it was a lot of work. I mean, and him and his team are really good. They understand what their audience wants. I mean, he's so controlled with what he makes sure that there's no alcohol or cigarettes in the backgrounds of any of his snaps because he knows he has a younger demographic. So we would take shots running through a Vegas casino and he'd be like, oh, I'm not gonna be able to use that one. Like there was a giant, alcohol logo behind. That's something that you don't hear people talking enough about, where Snapchatters respect and understand their community so much that they're gonna spend that much time doing that. And so afterwards with Tristan, and then the response, oh my God, the response from my own community saying, Brian, we want more fun Brian. We want more. And I always felt like I'm very, I wear a backwards hat, I wear crazy shoes, I'm very me. But I did notice, like, especially on Blab, most of my Blab stuff is me being passionate, me being advocate, me being influencer, not me running goofy off the side, not me, doing mock-ups. But, like that and then the Vanilla Fans thing were 2 of the things that were probably the most fun social content I've ever created. Both on Snapchat, and I didn't know how, my audiences aren't huge on Snapchat, I didn't know how they were gonna be responded by. And the response I got from some of the biggest names, the Gary V's, the Jay Bears, where they were like, oh my God, you have to keep doing that. that opened my eyes a lot to Snapchat, because you're right. I mean, the Tristan Tales one, to me, I mean, my respect for all of them. And I was lucky at South by, I got to hang out with pretty much every one of the Snapchatters that I followed for a while as I was studying them, and I got to sit there right there with them. I mean, there's some amazing talent on Snapchat. If you're listening to this and you're still not sold on it, I mean, there's some people on there that are doing some amazing creative things.
Well said, Brian. I want to give, I like to give the newbies that listen to the show a little bit of a beginner's tip, right? So say they've downloaded the app, they've maybe put a couple stories out there, but might get a little lost. They're kind of thinking, maybe this isn't for me. What kind of tips could you give a newbie that would really help them out?
You know, I think part of the problem is we always try to figure out what we want to snap about. And everybody says, what are we going to snap about, right? Like, I actually think, let's stop focusing on the what, and let's focus on why we wanted to do something, right? So if you wanted to snap that you were in your garden, the what is you're snapping your garden. The why is why you go out to your garden when it's snowing outside and still rake up off the snow. That's the things that resonates with people, right? So when you're telling a story, I mean, for all fairness, storytelling is the thing I study more than anything in life. Like, I mean, I can tell you breakdowns of Martin Luther King, Steve Jobs, Nancy Duarte, Obama. Because I believe storytelling is truly the underlying thing that will never go away, because it's how you relate to your audience. But the other thing about storytelling is it's individualized. Your storytelling, for me, is really about how you convey your message to relate to your audience. So I can't tell you how to storytell. I can give you best practices. So for me, when someone, instead of saying what you want to share, take a step back and say, why do I want to share? And share the why behind it. And you still will share the what, because you still want to show the garden. You don't want to talk about a garden. But I think that one is one of them. And then also I think of, I did a happy dance at CES a couple weeks ago, probably a month ago, when I got 500 views on a story for the first time. And I have, for all the Twitter accounts that are under my personal brand, it's a little less than 250,000 followers. I'm doing a happy dance for 500 viewers. Put that in perspective for all of your channels. I don't care if you have 2,000 followers on Twitter. You get 6 people that watch your snap. That's 6 eyeballs that sat down and had access, and they took the time to consume that content, right? And so celebrate that side. When I work with Periscopers, we put a sticky note over the Periscope number of live viewers, right? Because Periscopers change how they deliver their content and their passion, because they go, oh, I only had 8 people here, but when they have 80, they deliver it like it's freaking gold. And I'm like, well, that means you tell those 8 people they suck at life and you don't value them, right? And I think that's one for me. And people were telling me yesterday, I had so many people tell me, well, Brian, before the last couple of weeks, you were providing the same level of content, and you knew that you had 105 views and 80 views consistently. And for me, the views were not what I cared about, right? Like, I really cared was people saying that, hey, this resonated with me. Brian, I never knew that about you and your kids. Brian, I never knew this aspect of your life. Like, I never knew the poker story. And the poker story went from like me mentioning it on a Periscope to someone saying, can you talk about it on a Snapchat? Where then I did an open Q&A about my career as a professional poker player. And all of a sudden that story, I mean, I'm hired now for 2 gigs in the fall based on that poker story on Snapchat, because they now know another level. And it wasn't because I'm not talking about poker on stage, but I talk about, that's impact on nonverbal cues and storytelling. So my tip for newbies is the platform is growing. The reason I'm all in today is I believe a year from now, everyone will be all in. It'll be a much more where we're at. And I mean, there's a lot of people on it now, so don't mistake that for that piece. But I'm kicking the tires. I have no idea if an 8-minute snap story like I did yesterday, the longest one I've ever done, my longest up till yesterday was 3 minutes and 40 seconds. And I'm a data geek, so there's nowhere you can get that information other than if you're really geeky like me. Like, I download my stories and I chart them in an Excel spreadsheet, so I know my engagement. I'm very geeky on that side because that's how I learn. That's just my way of doing it. But yesterday was my longest one. Also my most viewed, also my most engaged. And so for me now, I'm like, well, I didn't know if long stories worked or not. Now that I tried it, I'm gonna try it again. And if it doesn't work as well, maybe I'll tailor it back a little bit. But I think the piece that Snapchat has no right or wrong answer, and your audience decides it's valuable, not you. Me as a Snapchatter does not decide what a great snap is. The people that are watching it decide. And now that I realize that, oh my God, Snapchat is a ton of fun, and I can tell you, I'm building out business value, business strategy, business cases for it right now. I'm having fun on it, but I can tell you, I am strategically looking on how I can grow advocates and community and influencers and empower them for brands.
That's amazing, Brian. I'm so glad you gave us that bit of information there. And that's why we love you, man. You're passionate, you're funny, you're authentic, and that's why I'm one of those Fanzo fanboys. So,
well,
whatever.
I appreciate. Yes. No, I appreciate. You know what? And here's something that I think probably advice for everyone on Snapchat, right? Like, so I had a lot of people yesterday telling me that they share kind of the same message as me, but they don't get the same response or engagement. And it's back to that how and why side, right? Like, I am not an expert. I will not tell you how to grow your Snapchat following. I don't know. I will tell you how I did it. And I will tell you what works for me. And I'll tell you what doesn't work. I openly admit every time I fail, I openly admit things that I'm not doing well and but what I'm really focusing on is I just want, like, the blog that I wrote earlier this week is my most read blog of 2016, and it's not even out 72 hours. And it was the least effort I put into any blog I did this year, because all I did was say, here's my thoughts on Snapchat. Here's my favorite resources that I use. You guys can, here's a home. It really was a home for me to direct all of the marketers who are getting on there and say, okay, Brian, I'm on here. Where can I go to learn like you did? And all of a sudden I was tired of answering that question. So I said, I'm going to create a blog post for it. And then I created that blog post, and the amount of people that were blown away by it. And so here's my piece on that is, don't talk at your audience, talk with your audience. And if you explain the how and why to do something, not just what. Don't just say, you need to be authentic. Authenticity freaking matters. That is completely different than, guys, authenticity matters. Remember, we want to relate with our audience. People want to hear from us. You're teaching. My focus is if you learn anything, I want to teach you alongside with me, because that's really my goal. And it's worked for me on every single social platform. It's worked for me in my career, my business, my brand. That's what I'm doing. I'm teaching companies how to empower their employees and their influencers to eventually not want to hire me anymore. Because I believe brands are great because they have great employees. So how am I going to believe that and then still believe they need to hire me for 4 years? No, I'm gonna be the guinea pig. I'm gonna teach them. I'm gonna implement. Eventually, I'm gonna tell them, all right, it's yours. Goodbye. Because that's really my philosophy on sharing. So, I mean, it might not work for you. I'm very lucky. I have an amazing community. But I will say, my goal every single snap, every single thing, is to share my view, my thoughts, and I'm not telling you what's right or wrong. I'm just telling you what's worked for me.
Very good. All right, so there's this new part of the show called Rapid Fire.
All right.
And in the episode that drops into iTunes, there's a lot more editing and there's some background music and some cool effects. But so guys, make sure that you are subscribed in iTunes to the Snapchatters podcast. You'll get to hear this tomorrow.
Nice.
Tomorrow.
Wow.
How wicked awesome is that? So this is rapid fire questions, Brian. I'm going to give you a topic, and you just give me the first thing that comes off the top of your head. Topic is going to be kind of easy for you. We're going to talk about Pittsburgh pro sports.
Ooh, I like that. Yes, bring it on.
That's pretty much right in your wheelhouse, right?
Yep.
All right, Brian, so here we go. Who's the next Pittsburgh professional sports team to win a championship?
Steelers.
Really?
Yep.
How soon?
I within the next 3 years, Big Ben's going to go out on top. I think Big Ben wins the Super Bowl in the next 3 years. He retires and leaves as a quarterback that was underrated to begin with. So yeah, as much as I love my Penguins, and well, I'm not going to put the Pirates out there because that's just far-fetched at the moment. I think unfortunately the Penguins are at too much talent, not enough hustlers, so they're going to continue to struggle. So yeah, trust me, and I'm a very a realist Steeler fan. I don't predict them to go 15-1 every year like all of my friends. I'm a very 9-7 guy, 8-8 guy. I don't pick them to go, very bad record very often, because let's face it, Steelers have done a pretty good job of not being the Cleveland Browns every year. But Steelers would be my answer in the next 3 years.
Best player to ever wear a Penguins jersey?
Mario Lemieux. Mario Lemieux is and the things he was battling through and going off Hodgkin's and getting off cancer treatment to get out of there. I was very lucky. I got to see, I think, 4 games total of him at the very end of his career. I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, but that guy. And he's also saved the city of Pittsburgh. The Penguins have been told, out of there twice, and they owed him so much money that he just said, rather than paying me, I'll buy the franchise with the backlog money that you have. So for me, being able to still have a team there, and the savior of the sport was the best player, I love me some Mario Lemieux.
Yep, you got to go with 66. Okay, you're building a franchise, and you get to take one current Penguin with you. Do you take Malkin or Crosby? Or somebody else?
Ooh. I think you still take Crosby. If I could eliminate the headache issue too, that would be, I believe in and I played hockey in college, so a little bias here, but I believe it's someone that makes everyone else around them better is the key to every sports team, right? It's the reason, I'm a fan of LeBron, because as much as LeBron is LeBron, LeBron does make the people around him better, and I think Crosby does that better than Malkin in a sense of Malkin and Ovechkin are more of the guys where they'll take the team on their back. I'm a big fan of sports players that make the people around, because I try to work hard on that even in my business, right? I know what I don't know. I surround myself with people who know what I don't, and I think that's where Crosby is. Yeah, Crosby is even he's a little old in his career. I think he's 29, but I would take him.
True or false, Brian? The Pirates win their division this year.
Yes, true. I think they win their division this year. I don't know how far they go in the playoffs because I don't think they're building a deep enough bullpen. But I would actually say they do a great job through the regular season. But bullpen and pitching will be a struggle. But it's nice to actually say that because I wasn't used to cheering for Pittsburgh in October up until like 4 years ago.
Yeah, that's something us Brewers fans aren't quite used to either.
Yes, and we've had the same. We can relate with that for sure.
For sure. So I like to ask those questions of you, Brian, especially because in your Snap stories, you're including your sports experiences in there as well. And I have a lot of fun just watching that fan experience from your perspective. So thank you so much for that.
Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned that because I think that's something about Snap. I mean, I work with people, personal branding was a big thing because it impacted my life. And, I pivoted a career. I left cyber and cloud computing and got more in the social business space. And I dedicated myself to out-engaging every other social media person. That was my focus on Twitter. I didn't need a bigger following. I didn't need a book. I was going to out-engage everybody and really focus on that. But I also focused on telling my story everywhere. And the thing about social media that is hard is if you have to tell a story, not tell your story, it's a lot of freaking work. And I spent a lot of time trying to tell a story that I thought other people wanted to hear. And then all of a sudden when I just decided to share what I am, who I am. I'm a Pittsburgh sports fan. I'm a proud dad. I'm a Jeep owner. I have tattoos. I love wearing backwards hats and Converse shoes. I started just kind of sharing all of the aspects of me. My success took off and social media got easier. And I think that's a lesson. If I could tell anybody anything, and I think Snapchat actually is going to empower, I call it the new mindset, but I call it the Snapchat effect. It's changing how we're going to do ads. It's changing, I want to see a CEO's life behind there because if you want someone to work for you as a company, I want to know that you're human. I want to know that you do have, I don't care if it's you're going to compare, different kinds of whiskey or you're, whatever. I mean, I love, Mike Baltus is in here and I love, learning things from, the different people that are different leaders and doing different things. When I can learn more about you, not only do I have more respect for you, but I think we have this element where if someone asks for forgiveness or asks me to do something, if I only know them in a business sense, there has to be a business value. But if I know them as a human sense, as a person, I mean, here, the truth is, and Chris Strubb's in the comments right now, I made this comment and I held true to it. And I think you even took me up on it whenever I said it. I said, if you make an ask to me on Snapchat, I'm almost 100% going to say yes. Where other platforms I'm not. And it's part of that element now where it's so engaged, it's so personalized. And if you still like me after the stuff you get to see on that side, because I would say that's the caveat, right? Like I have lost business. I have had people that tell me, well, I want you to present about change, but you have to wear a suit. And I'm like, well, I'm changing the mindset, and I either change the mindset my way or I'm not doing it. And unfortunately, that's not a place up until recently that I was not financially able just to do that willy-nilly. But I really did care about my story and my community. But when I was willing to lose those people, now I work with the right people. All the businesses that I work with are the right pieces. And I mean, I am so blessed. My community, the Snapchat. I mean, the outpouring of people yesterday that were like encouraging. They're my friend. They don't even need to do that because they know that if they right hooked me, I would say yes. But the people that were encouraging and going, yes, keep going, and we love this pieces. And like right in the middle of this like massive story that I was doing, I had gymnastics with my daughters, and I snapped about gymnastics. And someone reached out to me and said, Brian, you had all that controlled audience, and you dropped in the piece of you being a dad. And I said, yeah, I dropped in the story, the part of the story that's me, and that's. Throughout my day at 4 o'clock, the reason I love being an entrepreneur is if my daughters have gymnastics, an entrepreneur, I schedule every Wednesday. I don't have meetings that late because I want to go be part of my daughter's gymnastics class. And I think that's an element of Snapchat that is going to make our world, it's going to change social media. Social media a year from now will be drastically different. The way ads are delivered, the way people use it, and the way we engage because of this real person effect.
that one-to-one feel in Snapchat, for whatever reason, feels so much more authentic and real.
Because you can't automate it. I had 3 people message me yesterday and said, Brian, we know it's not you replying to every one of these snaps. And I replied back to him very personally, and I said, well, you also know you can't log into 2 accounts at the same time. Right. I was like, so I have 3 phones. I've said that repeatedly. And like for me, every engagement that I do on Twitter, every single reply is me. But scheduling content, I have a community manager that helps me schedule content. I have one that helps promote my shows. But on Snapchat, there's no one logs into mine. Now I could have someone log in like on hours where I'm not snapping to do like text replies if I wanted to, but that's a whole lot of so like for me, the fact that it can't be automated, it can't be faked. And I had 3 people call me out. 3 people said, snap me back your real picture if you're the one that's actually replying here. And of course I love that because I snapped them like a 60-second monologue of not telling them they're wrong, but like, dude, I love that you were calling me out on that, because you have to start realizing that we're tired of digital space being so fake, so automated, so disconnected. Now it's real, and now it's hard to fake it.
Damn right it is. And that's exactly why I love Snapchat. I most of the time nowadays, Brian, I'm sure you've experienced this way before I ever did, but a lot of the follows that I get on Twitter, half the time I'm like, okay, was this a real follow? Was this a real person? I mean, unless I connect with them on Blab or Snapchat or Instagram or Facebook, I don't know if they're real. And then if I follow them back, I'm almost guaranteed an auto DM, which pisses me off even more. So I don't know. That's just the way I am. And it bothers me now that I'm so immersed in Snapchat, right? Like it kind of bothered me. But since being in Snapchat, dude, it's like, oh, that really irritates the shit out of me. So when you say social media is going to change in a year, I completely identify with that just because of that feeling.
Well, and I think just something, I mean, people are what we care about on social media, right? And it's not automation that is the problem. It's bad people using it the wrong way, right? Or people using it badly, right? And I think that's the element where you say, like it's every time I just relate everything back to what would you do offline? And it's not offline online anymore. I can tell you when I met a lot of those creators who had no business knowing me, I can't help, well, maybe I can help them a little bit, but like when I met them offline at that event in South by Southwest, like the mutual respect for people being people, and like it was a conversation amongst people, and majority of their ages were a lot younger than me, and that's rare for me in the social space. I'm usually the young guy, especially in the tech social space. I'm usually the non-gray haired person. But the element that I loved was I've only been following them for 3 or 4 months, and I had the same relationship I follow people on Twitter for 2 years. And if that's not it's the same thing on Periscope. Periscope, people that I'm able to watch their scopes. We're able to look each other in the digital eyeballs. That's what I call it. When you're able to look someone in the digital eyeballs and know, understand who they are, understand their tics, understand their behaviors. Even when they rant or they do something crazy or they do something that annoys you, you know that they're getting you. You're not getting bad automation or, hey, they're getting paid for something, so all of a sudden they're blasting a bunch of links for a whole couple of days. Like even the sponsored snaps. Like there was a really, really overly done sponsored snap yesterday. You guys can figure out who it was. I thought she did a great job of it because it was like so in your face, over the top, that she was promoting a brand that because it was so over the top, I loved the content. It was just great. It was a fun story to listen to her whole dialogue and the way she built it into it. So, and I think that's the piece that I think it's going to impact every social platform across the piece.
So true. Brian, I want to be respectful of your time here today, and thank you everybody for being here and for sharing it out and for your questions here with Brian. I also know that, Brian, you asked your community on Snapchat if there was things that they wanted you to talk about on the show. This is the part where the floor is yours, man. You get to tell them whatever you want, and we'll go from there.
No, yeah, sure. So, I mean, a majority of the questions that I seem to get were really just kind of, it's, then how do I grow following? That's always one that, I think any snappers that are using that. And I keep saying, I don't know the answer. I just know how I'm doing it. And then the other piece was like, what got me to go all in? And it wasn't Gary Vaynerchuk's message. Now, I will say a year ago at South by, he looked at me. I got to hang out with him for a lot longer than this past year. And he told me, he's like, your personality, your community is ripe for live streaming. Go all in on live streaming. Own it. Make it something's yours. I was not someone that's a niche guy. I've always been someone that's kind of loves being a generalist. But I did niche out, and it was the most successful side from a business perspective. And I dove 100% all in on live streaming. So hearing Gary a year later kind of really hammering me home, smacking me on the chest, telling me to, siphon all your eyeballs to Snapchat. That was, that's definitely something that I value. But actually, the reason I went all in was the 100 people that I had on there first. The 100 people that I had on there first that were craving more, that were so connected with me, that were going out of their way to help me do other things without me having to ask. I started asking them, like, wait a second, why didn't you just go promote that for me? And they're like, Brian, what you're doing, the fact you're engaging and you're scaling and doing this all on Snapchat, like, I will do that every day. And I'm like, wow. So the real reason that I went all in really had to do with the people that are on Snapchat are so personal, engaged, and I'm one of those guys that I look at amplifying the happiness and the good in the world rather than focusing on the bad. You'll never hear me if I call out a brand, it's an emotional trigger at a moment, not because if I'm using a strategy, rather than calling out the brand, I go find a brand that's doing it good and I talk about them like overly, which really then makes people aware that like I'm focusing on the good, not the bad. And then the other question I got from the Snapchat group that asked me about it was, actually it was a Gary Vee question. I thought it was really good. Is they were like, Brian, we don't see you doing exactly the Gary Vee. How did you figure out, or I guess the question was more like, what part of Gary Vee do you like and what part of it you don't like? And this question hits home with me big time because I work hard on standing out from the noise, working with people on how you do that. And here's the thing. If you want to be the next Gary Vee, the next Richard Branson, the next anybody, you will be nothing but noise underneath of their freaking star. But I complete every single day, every opportunity, this show, the comments that are in there, I look at this as a learning opportunity for me. I have the ability to learn from every single person, every experience, everything I do. And by taking that approach, I learn and listen to Gary Vee. I learn and listen to I learn and listen to the Jay Bears of the world, to Seth Godin, to all of these massive thought leaders. But I take what they're saying, what's working for them, and then I understand what works for me, and I personalize it, and I put it into my playbook, I put it into my arsenal, but it's my delivery. It's my piece. And I'm not going to do some of the things that Gary's going to do. There is parts of things that like made me check what I'm doing. Like, oh, Gary does that better than me. So I think when we're looking at things like, when we're trying to idolize somebody, yes, I'm a Gary Vee fan. I am a fan. I bought books. I advocate for that guy. But I will tell you that for as much as I am learning from Gary, I learned from Snapchatters, I learned from my community, I learned from my 6-year-old daughter who actually was talking to me about whenever she was going through the app that she was on her iPod Touch. She actually was like trying to explain to me why she moved the icon to a certain spot, and I go, so the app that I'm working with the company that I'm working with, we're now going to integrate something that I learned from my 6-year-old daughter. So I guess my last piece for all the people that were asking me questions, it's truly, if you don't look at every single day person experience as an opportunity to learn for yourself as well as give value to others, you are missing out. Because I can tell you it's essential for my success. Essential that I consume. You know how many hours of content I consume on Snapchat? It is the amount of, and if you don't believe me, I'm sure Brad, I watch more. I watch so much because I don't know what works. And how am I going to know? How am I going to get on a stage? Because I'm very lucky to have kind of like, I'm newer to Snapchat, and some people might be listening to this going like, why is Brian keynoting? Why? Well, you know what? I'm very lucky to have, and I've been growing a community that really is responsive, and I'm riding a wave. But I want to represent the ways that are doing it right, and my best way of doing that is not bringing you on stage, because that's just not feasible. The idea is I'm going to listen and learn from everybody, and I'm going to share what I learn. And I think that's something I take a lot of pride in. I spend if you think I tweet a lot, if you think I snap a lot, you have no idea how much I look at my Twitter feed and how much I watch Snapchat content, because to me, that's my goal. That's my secret weapon. That's my secret weapon, is I consume more than I share.
That's the only way to learn.
It is.
Right?
It is.
Especially a guy like me. Brian, thank you from the heart, man. For the last year, you know me, I've been a relative newbie to the whole social media space. You've always been somebody that's answered my questions, whether even if I was nervous, you still did it. And the fact that you're here humbles me greatly. Brian, thank you so much. Please go follow my man Brian here, iSocialFanz, everywhere in the social universe, but especially on the snaps.
Yes, consistency. Consistency is key. You have to be consistent. Be consistent. I couldn't stress that enough. Consistency is key. iSocialFanz on every platform across the board.
Absolutely. Well done.
Cheers.
Brian, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, man. That's it.
Cool, man.
Wicked cool.
That was awesome.
Dude, awesome. Hell yeah.
That was good. I enjoyed it. I tell you what, it's crazy. It's been a world. You messaged me and you said you wish you had me on earlier. I'm glad you didn't have me on earlier because I think I've learned, right? I figured out what worked, what didn't work. I took steps back. I thought maybe I was going too hard on things, and I think where I'm at right now and where I see it, I'm really focused on changing the mindset around this just approach. And I think, it's in every conversation. And I think that's something, I love that you're doing the podcast. I love that the chat snap is going on. These are all things, like I hate Periscopers that go on Periscope to only educate people on the power of Periscope. When if someone's not already on the platform, they don't even know that it exists, right? Like I advocate for that. It's like the fact you're in somebody's ear explaining Snapchat, right? The fact there's a Twitter chat going on it. The fact that there's training, like this is how a solution like this changes the mindset, grows people, because we're going to where they're at, we're educating them, and then they'll come find this content. Because I don't have to tell anybody to download Snapchat. I just tell them, hey, you want open Q&A with me? I'm going to do it for 3 hours on Snapchat. You know how many people run and download Snapchat for that? Where if I would have told them, download Snapchat, follow me, they'd say, screw you, I don't need another app, right? And it's crazy. But so where I'm at right now, just on I finally, the light bulb went off between CES and South by, and I didn't tell anybody, I didn't go crazy on it. And what I decided was, I'm going to test it at South by. I'm going to really be snapping at South by, and I'm going to take all these aspects of I asked everything. These poor guys, the Sean Doris's, the Ave Americana, I freaking Ginny Can Breathe is I'm the biggest fan of hers. She is amazing human. And I just asked them questions. Hey, why were you doing this? And so many of their answers confirmed what I thought, which was that great moment where I'm like, okay, now I'm ready to really put my name on this and help amplify those people that are doing great. So I appreciate the kind words, Brad, but I'm excited. I will make sure I'm promoting the podcast and getting that out there because I think it's going to take, it takes all of us, right? I always say we is greater than me. But I think to have a great we have to be great individual me's. And that starts by doing things that are in our wheelhouse that we can make an impact on. How many new users, how many new followers, how many new people are jumping on this platform because of your podcast? Probably don't know the exact number, but if it's one, that's one more than we had before, and that to me is where I love it. So yeah, thank you so much for having me on, man.
Absolutely, man. Thank you. I'm honored. I appreciate it.
All right, guys.
I'm gonna sign off, guys. I gotta get back to the grind.
Yep, me too.
Brian, thanks again, man. Are you San Diego? Yes.
Yeah. Oh yes. I'm on. I'm actually on stage 3 times there. So watch out.
Yeah, I got one of your sessions.
So yeah, 4 o'clock on Monday. I'm the session before Gary V. But don't miss the opening session the very first day. That's all I can say.
Okay, I won't miss it then.
Sounds good.
Very cool.
All right, thanks guys. Thanks everybody for the kind words. Cheers.
Thanks guys, everybody that joined us. I really appreciate it. And like I said, if you're not following Brian already, I'm sure almost everybody in here is. But if you're not, make sure you do that. iSocialFanz everywhere.
All right, everybody.
Thanks guys. I forgot to tell you. Tyler Anderson and I will be talking on Blab next Monday
hey guys.
the 28th. So make sure you come and
Thank you guys so much for watching the Blab. That was an interview. It's called the Snapchatters Podcast. It's in iTunes, so just look up Snapchatters Podcast. I don't know how many episodes he's had. Probably like 15 or 20. I remember when he first launched it. But that's actually the first podcast I've ever been on to talk about Snapchat. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Give a little bit of Periscope insights into that. I don't Periscope every Blab that I'm on, mainly because I want to engage with you guys that are watching this. But sometimes I feel like you don't know about that conversation going on and give you views to that via my Periscope. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I did enjoy it, and I'm probably gonna do a Periscope a little bit later. Oh, what's up? Well, look at that. What's up, Rob? How's it going? Thank you guys so much. I'm all in. I'm excited. Thanks, guys.